Story 1. Update: my 21 male girlfriend 20 female was aulted while in the process of cheating on me. I don't know what to do from here. Original post: I've been sitting here for like 15 minutes trying to figure out how to start this. My head is completely spinning, my thoughts are just all over the place. I guess with a backstory, I've been dating Sarah, not using real names, for just under 2 years. She has a close friend, John, who she's known since she was a child. I never liked him. He was always a little creepy, blatantly flirted with Sarah for the entirety of our relationship, and made occasional passes that I was not comfortable with. So to cut to like 2 weeks back, Sarah and I were invited to a gathering and a party by a mutual friend. I had a workshop for work that night, so I couldn't attend, and with the current circumstances, I was never going to be inclined to go anyway. I didn't want Sarah to go either, but she was very adamant, and I guess I just didn't want an argument, so I said fine. We ended up running into John later that day, and he mentioned the same party and asked us if we had been invited as well. My girlfriend told him she was going, but I wasn't, and he got this weird smile on his face and said something along the lines of, "If you're going, I guess I have to go." Just something about his smile and the way he said it really rubbed me the wrong way. Plus, I didn't want to be possessive, but the idea of the both of them together all night at a party did not sit well with me. After we got back to our apartment, I told her a bit more firmly this time that I'm not comfortable with her going to the party, especially with him there. She told me I was overreacting and shut down the conversation. I'm sure most of you can figure out where this is going. I went to the workshop and she went to the party. It got to be like 2 a.m. and she hadn't gotten home, nor was answering my calls. Naturally, I was incredibly worried. About an hour later, one of her friends called me and told me she was found unconscious at the party and driven to the hospital. She was aulted by John. After spending 2 days, including that night at the hospital, and talking with police, I took her home. She told me John drgged her and dragged her upstairs where it happened in one of the bedrooms. The house at the party was very large. She was an absolute mess. She didn't want to go outside, she wasn't eating, had terrible nightmares, and I did everything I could to comfort her through this process. I was devastated for her and hated to see her like this, and I know this makes me sound like a terrible person. I don't blame her for John assaulting her, but I couldn't get the fact I tried more than once to dissuade her from going to the party, and specifically saying her being with John makes me uncomfortable out of my head. I feel I could have done more to protect her, and she should have listened to how I felt. Important side note, turns out John is literally living garbage. After her assault, we both felt it was best to get justice. There were DRGs in her system, and all the physical indications of RPE. We immediately filed a restraining order and the police opened an investigation. Within the span of a week, after news had gotten around, 2 other girls came forward with similar encounters with John. So the guy is basically a serial rapist. Cut to now, my girlfriend is still in no better shape than she was 2 weeks ago. She gets panic attacks out of nowhere, she's lost like 15 pounds and absolutely refuses to leave her apartment even to seek therapy. I was committed to taking care of her and being there for her, but I got a call from one of my close friends, Sam, this morning. It was a long conversation, but it basically boiled down to him, as well as many others at the party that night, saw Sarah flirting with John the entire beginning of the party. According to him and people he had been talking to, she was at the very least matching, if not being the initiator in these exchanges with John. He also recounts that she wasn't blacked out, drunk, or seemingly that out of it. And worst of all, many saw her holding John's hand, taking John upstairs. At this point I felt like I wanted to vomit. He told me he wanted the situation to cool down a bit before telling me, and was going to tell me after the party what happened, but with her being taken to the hospital under the circumstances, he didn't feel it was the right time. I decided to not assume anything and asked her about the specifics about what happened that night. She tried to tell me the same thing, that she was drgged and dragged into a bedroom. But when I told her what Sam had told me, the color completely drained from her face. She started to panic, and I did my best to calm her down, but it was like at least 30 minutes before she could catch her breath to speak. She was sobbing, but she was coherent enough to understand and basically confess to cheating on me. She said that she was drunk and hadn't been out for so long she wanted some adventure. She admitted that she was the one that took John to the bedroom and wasn't drgo there against her will. She kept apologizing and saying it was a terrible mistake and that nothing else was a lie. He did RPE her. I believe the last part, as far as I can understand now, was when they were in the bedroom fooling around when he slipped something into her or something like that when he forced himself on her. I don't know what to do anymore. She was RP'd, but to me, the everything before that was her still intending to cheat and actively cheating on me. I am devastated and I don't even want to look at her right now. I left the apartment and I'm currently at Sam's house. I don't know anything anymore. She lost her job to COVID. I pay rent for the apartment where her name isn't on the lease and groceries. She's become completely emotionally dependent on me the past few weeks. If I did break up with her, she would have nowhere to go, and as much as I resent her, I don't want something terrible happening to her. Please help. I need advice and I don't know what to do. Edit. There's been a lot of response in a short period of time, so I thought it would be best to address some things here. First off, I've been made aware that 2 posts of somewhat similar situations have to be posted to this sub in the past 2 weeks or so. I don't know what I could post here to prove this is true without exposing my privacy, so I'm sorry, but all I can do is give you my word. I'm just here looking for advice. I don't think this is something someone should be fantasizing about a karma farm. It's completely upended my life. Second thing is people questioning Sarah's account of the events. I didn't include every detail because I'm just trying to get my thoughts out, but her story matches the other 2 women who came forward in terms of the pattern of John's behavior. The 2 other women were also initially in a consensual environment before he drg'd them and assaulted them. From what they've said, and posted, a huge part of the reason they didn't come forward was because it started as consensual, and they thought that would make them not be believed. I also didn't want to get too graphic, but the nature of Sarah's assault was very violent, and not something most anybody would consent to, so that may be why he drgs them first as well. She had and still has traces of large bruises around her neck and other parts of her body as well as scratches and gashes. I don't really doubt at all she was indeed assaulted. The DRG found in her system was ketamine. While Sarah did enjoy partying, she never did anything harder than weed. Third, Sarah has been living abroad for school since starting college. Her parents have been made aware of the situation, but coming from a very religious background, while concerned for her well-being, aren't exactly being supportive, nor have put in the effort to come to see her. She never had many close friends for as long as I've known her other than John. I don't know where she would go if I told her she can't stay at my apartment. Now for the comments before reading the update. I'm so very sorry that you're going through this. A very similar thing happened to my friend in college. Almost eerily similar, and at the time the police told my friend that it's actually relatively common. Without getting too graphic, some DRGs can be administered physically without slipping it into someone's drink. My friend was being flirty, they went to hook up, and the guy DRG'd her. Another friend that was with her called me and panicked because she couldn't find her. Once I got there, sober obviously, I pitched a fit of epic proportions and refused to leave without checking every room, or I'd be calling the police to look instead. The condition we found her in was very severe. Very few people would consent to that kind of physical damage. Because I took her to the hospital and the extent of damage her boyfriend obviously found out, and then later found out that her intention was to cheat. It was a horrific situation for everyone involved. They lived off campus. Their lives were super entangled. My friend no longer felt safe alone, and no matter how much we wanted to support her, she didn't feel safe with us. I guess she didn't think we could physically protect her. I don't know. So she depended on her boyfriend 24/7, and he was absolutely wrecked emotionally, both from what happened to her and how betrayed he felt. He told her he would support her as someone who cared about her, and they'd reassess their relationship later. It took almost 6 months before she returned to school, and in the end they didn't stay together. Only you know what you can handle. It's obvious that you care about this girl. 2 weeks is just a tiny flash of time when dealing with the aftermath of this kind of violent assault. I suggest finding her a therapist who will do Zoom appointments. As much as you resent what she initiated, she will literally never forgive herself for putting herself in this position in the first place, and she no doubt feels fathoms of shame and guilt already. If you can allow her to stay with you for a few weeks of therapy, at least that would be wonderful. Perhaps look into victims' benefits where you're located. They should pay for therapy at minimum. In California we have victim witness. Also look into hooking her up with a victim's advocate. Honestly, your girlfriend may not be in an emotional state to make any decisions on how to move out, if that's what you need. A victim advocate can help her. If you can bear it, just be there, be kind, and give her a bit of time to recover before you give her the boot. She's not entitled to anything from you, but you sound like a good person. Try to be her friend for a while, if nothing else. It sounds like she literally has no one else. Hugs. Well, I think you need to step away from this relationship. At the very least, she did lie and cheat on you. No matter how it ended, she did lie and cheat. I'm terribly sorry for how it ended for her, and I'm sorry she got hurt. There is never an excuse to force sex on anyone, so I can't even imagine what she is going through. That isn't an excuse to cheat and lie, though. The greed op should likely end this, since she fully admits to intending to cheat. Although it is terrible what happened afterwards, it doesn't discount what she did before. However, and this is important, I believe that she will likely frame such a scenario as my boyfriend broke up with me because I was aulted. And I don't think that that is a massive stretch, since she has already demonstrated that she can be deceitful through her unfaithfulness. In which case op had better be prepared to be seen as the bad guy in the aftermath, as people will also likely side with her over him. All conjecture though. Serial predators choose victims carefully. It seems like he was hoping that the cheating aspect would make her reporting the RPE less likely. You report this and you'll be homeless for cheating. The rapist deserves jail. It's sad that Op's girlfriend is financially dependent on him and emotionally attached, but Op isn't her therapist and doesn't owe her the shelter, the relationship she threw away. Op should break off the relationship, especially since it's now based on dependence and basically isn't consensual for her. Op's girlfriend should find a friend to stay with. She's an adult who cheated and was aulted. Those are separate events. She can't trade being aulted by her other partner for being broken up by Op. I'm suspicious about how much drinking she did before taking him upstairs. She seems convinced she was sober enough to cheat, but she may be minimizing his role. This is a real thing victims of RPE sometimes do. And now for the update. I needed some time to sort out the situation, but I did read most to as many replies as I could, and I appreciate all the advice and messages, especially from those who have been put in similar situations as I. I guess I should start by clearing up a few things. First off, to everyone who thought my story had holes in it, it definitely did. And I'm sorry for that. At the time and even now, I was missing a lot of information and was filling in holes as best as I could with what I had. I also didn't want the post to get too long, so I left out information that I guess would have painted a better picture of my situation. I'll try my best to include those missing details. If you're just interested in the update, skip down a few paragraphs. So details about John. He is part of Sarah and I's social circle and lives quite close to us. Some of the behavior from John towards Sarah that made me uncomfortable throughout the course of our relationship included constantly making comments about her body, putting his arm around her every chance he could, asking her to go with him on a trip to Europe last summer. Just the two of them, poking her breasts when she's wearing tight clothing, saying things like "I'm lucky I met her when I did," or "she would have been with him by now," etc. It's not any one thing but accumulation of everything that made me uncomfortable with her spending a lot of time with him. She never encouraged this behavior, at least when I was around, but didn't actively discourage it either, despite we openly talking to her about my boundaries. She just brushed it off as them knowing each other for so long and being comfortable with one another. A few smaller details I guess were relevant I should mention. 1. We are not in the COVID, while still obviously an issue in our country. Our area is relatively COVID-free, and everyone going to the party Sarah went to were part of our larger social circle. It was at a large condo a friend of ours was renting for the summer. It was not some open invite with 100+ people. Still dumb, I know that there were 30-ish, maybe 40 people there, so in hindsight, yet no one should have been at the party to begin with. Lastly, clearing up both Sarah and I's financial situation. I am lucky enough to have my parents paying for my tuition, whatever scholarships didn't cover, so I can focus my resources on just day-to-day living costs like rent and groceries, etc. Sarah, on the other hand, was pretty much thrown to the wolves after finishing high school. Her parents, like I stated in my edit, are very religious and very controlling, so they told Sarah they were only going to pay for her schooling if she went to a local college. She refused and came to my school. She lived in residency for her first 2 years, which was covered by the financial aid. I got my apartment about a year ago, and with COVID and her not wanting to go back home, we decided it would be best if she moved in with me. Her finances are basically completely tied up on tuition and student loans, so I offered to keep paying full rent despite her living with me full-time. Actual update. Oh boy, I wish I could say some of the things that have gotten more clear in the past week, but honestly, it's been a total cluster F, and it's only gotten worse. I spent a few days at Sam's reaching out to my friends trying to get a clearer picture of what happened that night before going back to talk to Sarah. I got told same story multiple times, that she was the one who started flirting with John and led him upstairs. I should say right now, in my first conversation with Sarah confronting her, she didn't explicitly say that she had intended to sleep with him that night, she just confirmed she took him upstairs. She was basically having panic attacks throughout the entire conversation, so I had a hard time pushing her for clarity. So by this point in my heart, I was trying to find any excuse at all for her to save our relationship. But my mind was telling me that the relationship was over, at least for the time being. But as many of you commented, despite my obviously grief in losing a 2-year relationship, I decided I'd be willing to let her stay in my apartment, again rent-free, to at least the end of October to sort out other living arrangements and support. I called her about 3 days after staying at Sam's and told her I'm willing to listen to her side of the story, but I need the complete truth about everything. And she agreed, so I went back to the apartment later that evening. We sat down and I asked her about what really happened that night. She started crying right away, but not panicking, and told she had to tell me something about herself. Sarah's always been into the partying scene more than me. I've never really been comfortable around DRGS and that environment in general. But I went with her anyway about once a month or so. Her, on the other hand, would have girl nights out and parties pretty much every weekend. Right at the beginning of our relationship, I told her I'm not really comfortable being with someone that is involved with hard DRG use. My brother has a history of addiction, and I've seen what it can do to somebody and the people around them. She told me that's fine since she only drinks and smokes weed occasionally. Well, it turns out for about a year now she's been doing harder DRGS at parties when I'm not there, and our girl nights were often just her and some from our social circle, John included, going to our friend's apartment to do shrooms. I was shocked to say the least, and I didn't even know what to think in that moment. I just tried to ask her more about what happened on that night, that she was assaulted, and if she was intending on cheating on me that night. She comes clean and tells me that she did lead John upstairs, but swears she wasn't trying to sleep with him, but wanted DRGS. He told her it was cocaine, but obviously it was not, since only fentanyl and alcohol showed up in her system at the hospital. She told me he immediately started coming on to her, but she tried to fight him off, but eventually she was too DRG-jet out to fight back. After consoling her for a while, I asked her what her relationship with John was really like before, and if they did anything together before what happened that night. She admitted that they made out a few times before around Christmas last year, but promised it didn't go any further than that. She was begging me to forgive her, and that she needs me in her life. She was just in a rebellious phase because of her upbringing. I didn't know what to believe anymore, and still don't, to be honest. I just was completely overwhelmed by everything. So I told her I needed to clear my head and left again. Sam was nice enough to let me stay at his place again. I talked to some of my friends, and she said that she was doing DRGS with, and they confirmed. I was pretty upset at them for hiding it from me. They told me she basically forced them to keep it a secret from me. It feels like so much of my relationship was a lie. She wasn't the person that I thought she was, and she lied constantly for who knows how long. At this point my mind is basically made up, so I call her and I told her it's over, but she can stay at the apartment until the end of October, but only if she finds a therapist and gets some help during that time. She basically lost it during the call, but my mind was made up, so I just said I'd be staying at Sam's for a while and hung up. I wish that was the last of the SHT that happened, but literally a day after that I started getting spammed with hate messages and calls from friends, relatives, and people I don't even know. Turns out she's posted all over social media about how I was breaking up with her because she was ARPED and was kicking her out with nowhere to go in these COVID times. She also wrote that I had been emotionally abusing her after her assault, victim blaming her, and stopping her from getting a therapist. I am completely lost. I'm furious, heartbroken, and I can't even describe all the emotions I felt. I called her again that night and told her that she has 2 weeks to move out now, and I don't want to hear from her again. I had to spend the past week playing damage control, trying to clear my name on social media, calling friends and family. I was ostracized by coworkers, though luckily my boss was on my side. I was getting doxxed, death threats, my life basically fell apart. Sam, thank goodness, was completely understanding through all of this and said I could stay at his place until Sarah moved out. She's moving out on Friday, but I don't want to go back to that apartment anymore. I've had to cut out friends. My reputation is now in the garbage. I lost the first and only person I ever loved. I don't know anymore. I low-key want to die, but I'll find a therapist sooner or later. I just feel numb to everything. I don't even know if I'm right or wrong in this situation anymore. I hope I haven't rambled on too much. I know this post is really long, but thank you really for everyone who showed support in the last post. It meant a lot. Edit. Someone's comment made me realize she was still lying to me the second time I talked to her. She changed her story about what she was DRG'd with, and I didn't even realize it. I was not told by the hospital what she had in her system, and I'm not very knowledgeable on DRGS in general. All that information I came from Sarah. I don't even know if she was DRG'd against her will at all at this point. Goodness, I'm doubting everything now. This is not the person I thought she was. I don't even care. She's out of my life now.